My wife had an affair with my best friend, and now they're both trying to take my $500, $0 inheritance in our family home, claiming I signed away my rights during a fake will I never knew was drafted. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation where my wife, Emily, would betray me so blatantly. Honestly, it all started with little signs, things I brushed off at first because I didn't want to believe the worst. But then, out of nowhere, everything exploded in a way I couldn't have predicted. I want to tell this story because maybe someone out there needs to hear that betrayal doesn't just hurt, it can destroy everything you thought was solid. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I first noticed something was off. Emily had been acting weird for a couple of weeks, distracted, secretive, always looking over her shoulder like she was hiding something. I'd come home from work and find her with her phone in her hand, quickly hiding it when I entered the room. She'd make up some excuse about work emails or needing to check something for her fashion blog, which she's never actually done anything with. I should have seen the warning signs then, but I was too caught up in my own routine to pay attention. What really set me off was when I started noticing small things. Her phone bill skyrocketed, and there were calls at odd hours. I found her hiding a new set of lingerie, something I'd never seen before. She also started going out more without telling me where she was going, claiming she was meeting friends but refusing to introduce me to any of them. And she'd get defensive whenever I asked about her whereabouts, snapping at me, calling me paranoid or insecure. That was her usual crap, gaslighting me into thinking I was overreacting. Then came the moment that changed everything. I had been working late one night, and I decided to check her phone, something I'd never done before, but I was desperate for answers. I knew I shouldn't invade her privacy, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something big. When I unlocked her phone, I saw her messages with a number I didn't recognize. It was a guy, Matt, an old friend from college. Their texts were flirtatious, filled with innuendos and plans to meet up. My stomach sank. I read through the entire conversation. It was obvious they'd been seeing each other behind my back for weeks, probably longer. They'd been talking about sex, how hot she looked in her new lingerie, and even planning secret meetings. I saw pictures she sent him, her in a revealing dress, her lying in our bed in a way that made my blood boil. They talked about how they couldn't keep their hands off each other. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. It was like I'd been hit in the face with a sledgehammer. I wanted to confront her immediately, but decided I needed to gather my thoughts first. I sat there in the dark, clutching her phone, trying to process what I'd just seen. Emily had always been a little high maintenance, but I never thought she'd cheat. We had a decent life. She was supposed to be my partner, my best friend. And now I was staring at proof that she'd been lying and sneaking around, possibly for months. I felt sick, betrayed, angry beyond words. How could she do this to me? After everything we built, after all the plans for our future. And then there was Matt, my best friend. I never saw it coming. I always trusted him. We'd gone on trips together, hung out like brothers. And now I realized he'd been sleeping with my wife the entire time. It was a punch to the gut I couldn't shake. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the moments I'd missed, all the times she'd been with him instead of me. My mind was racing, trying to find some explanation, some way to make sense of it. But deep down I knew the truth. I'd been played for a fool. My wife was cheating on me and my best friend was complicit. I didn't know how to feel, hurt, furious, betrayed, and incredibly stupid for not seeing the signs sooner. The next morning I knew I couldn't keep this to myself. I had to confront her. I wasn't going to let her keep lying and pretending everything was fine. I needed answers, and I needed to decide what to do about my marriage, about my life. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about trust, betrayal, and the fact that everything I thought I knew was a lie. I had no idea what was coming next, but I knew I couldn't go back to the way things were before. The confrontation didn't happen right away. Honestly, I needed time to calm down, to think about what I was going to say, and more importantly, what I was going to do. I spent the day trying to keep my cool, but inside I was boiling. Every time I looked at her, I saw the lies, the betrayal, the way she'd been sneaking around behind my back, and it made me feel like I was living in some twisted nightmare. That evening, I finally decided enough was enough. I called her into the living room, told her to sit down, and looked her straight in the eyes. She was acting innocent at first, trying to act like I was overreacting, that it was just a miscommunication, a mistake, that she loved me and it was just sex, nothing more. But I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I told her. I knew about Matt, about the texts, about everything. Her face went pale for a second, then she started spinning her web of lies. She said she didn't mean for it to happen, that Matt was just someone she reconnected with after years, and that she never thought it would go this far. She claimed they only met up a few times, that she was bored and lonely, that she didn't want to hurt me but was weak. She cried, told me she was sorry, that she loved me, and that she'd end things with Matt immediately. I listened, but inside I was already planning my next move. Her excuses didn't sit right with me. I'd heard enough lies. I told her I needed some time to think, that I was hurt and angry and that I needed space. But deep down I knew I couldn't stay with her. Not after seeing those messages, not after realizing she'd been lying for who knows how long. I also knew I had to do something about Matt, my best friend, the guy I'd trusted with my life. How could he do this? How could he sleep with my wife and then pretend nothing happened? It was a betrayal I couldn't forgive. In the days that followed, I started digging into everything. I wanted proof, something concrete I could use to confront her or even take legal action if I had to. I found out that Emily had been manipulating the situation to make it seem like I was the problem, accusing me of being paranoid or controlling whenever I questioned her. She'd even gone as far as planting seeds of doubt about my mental health, trying to turn our friends and family against me. Meanwhile, I discovered that she'd been secretly rewriting her will, trying to cut me out of everything. She hired a lawyer, had some fake documents drafted, documents I never knew about, that claimed I signed away my rights to our family home and our inheritance of $500,000. The worst part, she was trying to get her hands on my inheritance, and I realized she was scheming with Matt to do it together. They thought I'd never find out, that I'd be too blindsided to fight back. I felt like I was living in a nightmare. I had built a life with Emily, trusted her with everything, and now was discovering she'd been planning my downfall all along. I couldn't believe how cold and calculating she'd become. She lied to my face, played the victim, all while secretly plotting to take everything I owned. I was furious, at her, at Matt, at myself for not seeing it sooner. But I also knew I had to act fast. If they had their way, I'd be left with nothing, my inheritance, my home, my dignity. That's when I started planning my revenge. Not just to expose her, but to make sure she paid for what she'd done. I wasn't going to let her walk away with my money, my house, and my reputation. She thought she could manipulate the system, lie her way out of it, and leave me broken. Well, she was about to find out that I wasn't going down without a fight. I had some cards to play, and I was determined to turn this whole situation around. I couldn't believe how quickly everything had changed, from a life I thought was stable to a setup for a war I didn't see coming. But I was ready. I knew that if I didn't act now, I'd lose everything, my marriage, my money, my future, and I wasn't about to let that happen, not without a fight. Over the next few days, I threw myself into gathering evidence and planning my next move. It was a whirlwind of anger, betrayal, and cold calculation. I couldn't believe Emily had gone so far. She'd lied, cheated, and schemed behind my back, all while pretending to be the perfect wife. And Matt, my best friend, had betrayed me in the worst way possible. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut every time I thought about it. I started by hearing a private investigator. I needed to know exactly how deep this rabbit hole went. Turns out, Emily had been meeting Matt at a hotel a few towns over, not just once but multiple times. The investigator got photos of her sneaking out in the middle of the night, her in that revealing lingerie, and even some video footage of her and Matt kissing passionately in the hotel parking lot. The proof was irrefutable. I could finally see the extent of their betrayal in black and white, or rather, in clear images and videos. Meanwhile, I also dug into her financials. I hired a lawyer experienced in family law and estate disputes. I wanted to see what she'd done with her fake will and how she was trying to manipulate the inheritance. Turns out, she'd been working with a lawyer she'd hired secretly, someone she paid off to draft that fake will, claiming I signed it. The document was full of inconsistencies, and I found a trail of payments to the lawyer's offshore account. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. I also discovered that she'd managed to get a hold of some of our joint accounts, transferring money into accounts she'd set up in her name alone. It wasn't a huge amount, just enough to make me worry she was planning to drain everything once she had the legal upper hand. I felt sick knowing she'd been scheming behind my back, trying to cheat me out of my inheritance and our family home. At the same time, I started preparing my own countermove. I drafted a legal complaint to contest the fake will and prove that I hadn't signed any such document. I also contacted a forensic accountant to trace every dollar she'd moved around, to establish that she was trying to defraud me. I knew I had to act quickly. If she managed to get her hands on the inheritance or the house, I'd be left with nothing. But the most shocking part came when I uncovered her plans to get her hands on the house. She'd been talking with her lawyer, trying to find loopholes to claim that she was entitled to half of everything because of some supposed joint effort or common law claim she was trying to make. The lawyer had drafted documents that she'd planned to submit, fake affidavits, fake signatures. She was so close to pulling it off, I could feel it. I had to confront her again, but this time I was ready. I called her into the house one evening, told her I knew everything, about her affair with Matt, about the fake will, about her schemes to steal my inheritance. She looked panicked at first, then tried to deny everything, saying I was paranoid, jealous, that she loved me and that I was just overreacting. But I had the evidence now. I showed her the photos, the bank statements, the fake documents. Her face went pale. She tried to lie her way out of it, claiming I was misunderstanding, that Matt and she were just friends, that I was blowing things out of proportion. I told her I wasn't stupid anymore, that I'd already hired a team of lawyers and investigators, that I was going to fight her and Matt in court. Her lies turned into frantic desperation. She started crying, begging me to forgive her, saying it was all a mistake, that she'd do anything to fix it. But I wasn't buying it, not anymore. I told her that her lies had cost her everything, my trust, our marriage, and her chance at a future with me. I told her she'd have to face the consequences of her actions. That night, I felt a strange mixture of relief and fury. Relief, because I finally had the proof I needed. Fury, because I'd been so blind, so trusting, and now I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. I realized I'd been played for a fool, manipulated by the woman I loved and the man I called my best friend. I promised myself that I'd do everything in my power to expose their lies and make sure they paid for what they'd done. This was just the beginning of a long battle. I knew that once the legal wheels started turning, things would get even messier. But I was ready. I wasn't going to let Emily or Matt get away with stealing my inheritance or ruining my life. They thought they could lie, cheat, and manipulate their way into my assets, but I was going to fight back hard. I had the evidence and I had the resolve. Whatever it took, I was determined to come out of this victorious, even if it meant tearing everything down first. The legal process moved faster than I expected. Once I filed the initial complaints and presented my evidence, Emily and Matt's facade started cracking. My lawyer was ruthless, and I made sure every document, every email, every piece of proof was airtight. The fake will was the biggest issue. Once I proved it was forged, that alone would invalidate her claims to the inheritance and the house. But Emily wasn't willing to go down without a fight. She started playing dirty, making false accusations, trying to spin stories that I was abusive or unstable to sway the judge. Meanwhile, Matt's role in all this became more obvious. His texts, his secret meetings. Everything was now on record. I managed to get recordings of him trying to bribe witnesses, even trying to intimidate some of my friends into silence. It was clear they thought they had cover, her pretending to be innocent, him denying everything, until I brought the evidence to court. That's when the real chaos started. One night, I got a call from my lawyer. They had uncovered something shocking. Emily had been laundering money through some shell companies, funneling cash into her accounts to hide her assets. The fake will was just part of her bigger plan to hide her true wealth and claim my inheritance. She'd even hired a private detective to dig up dirt on me, trying to find any reason to discredit me in court. Her desperation was palpable. I remember feeling numb. All this time, I thought I was fighting for my marriage, for my future. Turns out, Emily had been planning her escape with Matt for months, maybe longer. They thought they could manipulate the legal system, lie their way into my assets and walk away with everything I built. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I had the evidence, the law on my side, and a burning desire to see her pay for her betrayal. The court hearings were intense. Emily showed up trying to act innocent, a damsel in distress, crying about how she was misunderstood, how I was controlling her. Matt was nowhere to be seen at first, but then he showed up, trying to deny everything, claiming he was just a good friend helping Emily through a rough patch. The judge wasn't buying it. I could see the wheels turning as my lawyer laid out the case, piece by piece, destroying her lies with facts. What really hit me was when the judge looked at her and said, "Given the evidence, I find that the will was clearly forged, and your attempts to claim the inheritance are invalid. The rightful owner is the person who has maintained the estate, Mr. My Name." Hearing that made my stomach drop, but also lifted a huge weight off my shoulders. It was a victory of sorts, but I knew the fight wasn't over yet. Emily was still trying to cling to her lies, and Matt was still out there somewhere, probably plotting his own next move. I also discovered that Emily had been trying to manipulate some of our mutual friends and family, spreading stories about how I was abusive or mentally unstable. She wanted to turn everyone against me, to make me look like the bad guy so she could walk away with her head held high. But I had the truth, and I was prepared to fight for my reputation too. I made sure my friends saw the evidence, heard my side, and understood that I'd been the victim of a calculated scheme. As for the house, they tried to claim it under some fabricated joint effort clause, but the court dismissed that too once we proved she'd forged her signatures and manipulated the documents. The house stayed in my name. Her plans to take everything from me had been thwarted, and I could finally breathe again, though I knew the emotional scars would take longer to heal. In the aftermath, I felt a strange mixture of relief and anger. Relief that I'd fought for what was right, anger that I'd been betrayed so deeply by someone I loved and trusted. I realized I'd been living in a kind of fog, blind to the lies and manipulations. But I also understood something crucial. Trust is fragile, and sometimes you only find out the truth when everything's falling apart. Looking back, I learned that you can't always trust appearances. Emily played her cards well, but her greed and her betrayal only made her downfall inevitable. I also learned that sometimes you have to fight dirty to get justice. I don't regret uncovering everything, even if it meant stepping into a brutal war. It was necessary. I had to protect what was mine, and I had to make sure she paid for her lies. Now I'm rebuilding, trying to put the pieces back together. It's not easy. The pain of betrayal lingers, but I know I'm better off without her. The trust is gone, but I've gained clarity. I see people for who they really are now. And I want others to know, if you're ever in a situation where someone you love turns out to be a liar, a cheat, or a thief, don't hesitate to fight for yourself. Because sometimes that's the only way to get your life back. The court's decision, though a victory, didn't erase the pain or the betrayal I'd endured, but it did give me a sense of closure I desperately needed. Still, the aftermath was a roller coaster of emotions. I had fought tooth and nail to protect what was mine, my inheritance, my house, my reputation, and I'd come out on top. But inside, I was emotionally drained. The trust I once had in Emily was shattered beyond repair, and even with her legally out of the picture, I felt the weight of everything she'd done. One of the most unexpected things was how quickly people turned against her once the truth came out. Her friends and family, who'd once thought she was the perfect wife, saw through her lies and manipulations. Some called her a liar, a thief, a schemer. Others were too shocked to say much at all. I kept my distance from most of them, not because I didn't want support, but because I knew I needed time to process everything myself. My focus was on rebuilding, on making sure I stayed grounded amid the chaos. The hardest part was dealing with the aftermath of her betrayal on a personal level. I'd always believed in honesty and loyalty, and now I felt like I'd been living in a nightmare. I kept asking myself, how did I miss the signs? How could I have been so blind? The truth was, I'd trusted her too much. I'd taken her for granted, assuming she'd always be honest with me. It stings to admit, but I realized I had been naive, trusting blindly, ignoring the red flags. In the weeks that followed, I decided to seek therapy, not just to help me cope emotionally, but also to rebuild my confidence. I needed to understand how someone I loved could betray me so deeply, and how I could prevent myself from falling into the same trap again. It was a long process, but I started to see that healing wasn't just about the court victories. It was about forgiving myself for the pain I'd endured and learning to move forward. Part of that moving forward involved cutting ties with Emily entirely. I changed my phone number, blocked her on social media, and told my friends and family to do the same. I didn't want her to have any more control over my life. I also made a conscious effort to reconnect with old friends, to surround myself with people who valued honesty and loyalty. Slowly but surely, I started feeling like myself again. Financially, I was cautious. I hired a new accountant to review all my assets, making sure Emily hadn't hidden any other money or assets. I also put legal protections in place, trusts, estate plans, and updated my will to ensure that nothing like this could happen again. I learned that, no matter how much you trust someone, you should always have safeguards in place, especially when it comes to money and property. One of the biggest lessons I took from this entire ordeal is that betrayal cuts deep, but it also reveals who your true allies are. The friends who stood by me, the lawyer who fought tirelessly, and even some of Emily's own family members who saw through her lies. Those people reminded me that integrity still exists. It's painful to go through such a betrayal, but it also clears the way to a better future, one built on honesty and self-awareness. Now, I'm focused on rebuilding my life from scratch. I've started dating again cautiously. I'm more aware of red flags, more guarded about who I trust. I don't hold grudges. I've learned to forgive, not for her sake but for my own peace of mind. I've come to accept that not everyone is who they seem, and that sometimes you have to go through hell to find your way back to the light. Looking back, I realize I'm stronger than I thought. Betrayal taught me a hard lesson in vigilance and self-worth. I want others to understand that if you ever find yourself in a situation like this, don't be afraid to fight, legally, emotionally, or otherwise. Protect yourself, stand your ground, and never let anyone steal what's rightfully yours. Because at the end of the day, your happiness and integrity are worth more than any false promises or lies. And no matter how dark things seem, there's always a way to come out stronger on the other side. It's been a couple of years since everything fell apart, and honestly, I never thought I'd get to this point. Looking back, I realize how much I've learned about myself through all of this, about trust, betrayal, and resilience. The pain of discovering that Emily had been lying, cheating, and scheming behind my back was overwhelming, but it forced me to confront parts of myself I'd never had to face before. I had to become stronger, smarter, more cautious, and most importantly, more aware of what really matters. The biggest lesson I took away is that no matter how much you love someone, you should never ignore the red flags. I was so caught up in the life we built together, in the idea of what we had, that I overlooked the small signs. Her secretive phone habits, her sudden obsession with control, her lies about where she was going. It's easy to dismiss those things when everything seems fine, but they're often the warning signs that something isn't right. Trust your instincts, I tell people now. If something feels off, dig deeper, because the truth has a way of revealing itself eventually. I also learned the importance of protecting yourself financially. No matter how much you trust your partner, always have safeguards in place. Emily's scheme to forge a will and manipulate legal documents was a wake-up call. I never thought someone I loved could be so cold and calculating, but that's exactly what she was. Now I've set up trusts, updated my estate plan, and made sure my assets are protected. You never know when a betrayal might come from the people closest to you, and being prepared is the best defense. Most importantly, I've come to realize that healing isn't linear. Some days are better than others, and that's okay. I still get angry sometimes, still feel the sting of betrayal, but I also feel a sense of liberation knowing that I took control of my life again. I didn't let her or Matt ruin me. Instead, I fought back, I exposed the truth, and I reclaimed what was mine. That's what matters most. The support from friends and family was crucial. I found out who truly cared, those who stood by me, listened, and believed in my version of events. Their support reminded me that even in the darkest moments, there are people who value honesty and integrity. I've learned to lean on those relationships, to rebuild trust slowly, and to cherish the genuine connections that remain. Now I focus on the future. I'm rebuilding my life on a foundation of honesty, self-respect, and awareness. I don't dwell on the betrayal anymore. Instead, I use it as a lesson, something that made me sharper, wiser, and more resilient. I've realized that life throws curveballs, and sometimes you have to go through hell to come out stronger. So, to anyone out there dealing with betrayal, I'd say this: don't be afraid to fight. Stand up for yourself, get the proof you need, and don't let anyone steal your peace or your future. Trust is fragile, but your strength is. Keep your head high, learn from the pain, and move forward. Because no matter how dark things seem, there's always a way back to the light. And in the end, the most important victory is reclaiming your happiness and your dignity, because that's what truly matters.